Hey, this is Otto's Hot Takes, and today we're back for another hot take. Today I'm going to be arguing that teenagers that make less than $25,000 a year should not have to pay federal income tax. There's several reasons that I think this. First, the financial impact on the government would be minimal, since teenagers only contribute a tiny fraction of total tax revenue. Exempting them from income taxes would have a very small effect on government funding. Second, the money could be used to invest in their futures. College tuitions, trade school programs, and career training continues to become more expensive. Allowing teenagers to keep more of the money they earn would help them save for higher education and reduce future student debt. Third, teenagers lack political representation. Working adults can vote for leaders who determine tax policy. Teenagers cannot. This creates a situation similar to the one that angered the American colonists before the Revolution. From a constitutional perspective, this argument connects to democratic principles of representation and consent of the government. While the Constitution does not explicitly prohibit taxing non-voters, Americans' founding philosophy was built on the idea that citizens should have a voice in government decisions that affect them. Logically, if teenagers are considered responsible enough to work, they should either be exempt from taxation or given greater political representation. There are some strong arguments against exempting teenagers from taxes, however. Many people argue that taxes fund services everyone uses. Teenagers benefit from public roads, police protection, public schools, emergency services, and national defense. Since they receive these benefits, opponents argue that they should contribute to funding them. Second, the Constitution does not require voting rights in order to be taxed. Many groups throughout American history have paid taxes while being unable to vote, including children and some non-citizen residents. Third, opponents argue that taxation teaches civic responsibility. Paying taxes helps young people understand how government functions and encourages them to become informed citizens. Some might say that creating a special tax exemption for teenagers could make the tax code more complicated and reduce fairness. These are all good takes. I don't agree with them for the most part. But I'm also not the first person to think of this. The idea of taxation without representation has deep roots in American history. Before the American Revolution, the British government imposed taxes on the American colonies, including the famous tax tea on tax. Colonists argued that they were being taxed without having an elected representative in Parliament, much like our teenagers today. One of the founding fathers, Patrick Henry, helped lead opposition to British taxation policies. In 1765, he wrote the Virginia Resolve, arguing that only representatives elected by Virginians had the right to tax Virginians. So maybe the guy that created the foundation of the United States knew what he was talking about, and, he's got a good point. Much like our founding fathers, teenagers today are being taxed without being represented. There's a Supreme Court case that connects to this issue, and that's the Wesbury versus Sanders 1964 case. In this case, voters in Georgia argued that congressional districts were unevenly populated, meaning some voters counted more than others. The Supreme Court ruled that congressional districts must contain roughly equal populations. The constitutional issue involved in Article 1 of the Constitution. This case matters because it reinforces the idea that representation is a fundamental part of American democracy. The court emphasized that American citizens deserve equal influence on government decision. Although the case is not specifically about taxes or teenagers, it highlights the importance of representation in our democratic system. Supporters of my position can use this can use this case to argue that representation remains a core American value. Obviously, this issue relates to several constitutional principles, like the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. This amendment recognized that younger Americans who could serve in the military deserved a voice in government. And it kind of goes for the same way for taxes. Supporters, like myself, think that if they can make an amendment that changes the voting age from 21 to 18, they could also make an amendment that stops people under 18 from being taxed. That's about the end of my debate. After examining both of the sides, I believe teenagers earning less than $25,000 a year should not be paying federal income taxes. The strongest reason is that these taxes generate relatively little value while placing financial burdens on students who are trying to save for their educational futures. A common counterargument is that teenagers benefit from government services and therefore should help pay for them. Well, that is true. The amount collected from teenage workers is small. What should we do next? Congress should study the financial impact of creating a federal income tax exemption for workers under the age of 18 who earn less than $25,000 annually. Lawmakers should explore tax credits or exemptions specifically designed for minors. Finally, Americans should continue discussing the relationship between taxation and representation. Even if no changes are made, this debate encourages citizens to think carefully about fairness, civic participation, and constitutional principles. If the United States was founded on the belief that government should represent the people it governs, whether or not we ultimately change tax laws for teenagers, the question remains worth asking. Should citizens who pay taxes have greater voice in how those taxes are used? Thank you. I'll see you on the 4th episode of Adam's Hot Takes.